Many conservative and evangelical Christians think of Swedenborg's Science of Correspondences as a kind of esoteric or Gnostic heresy. They see it as a system he invented with the sole purpose of challenging and discarding Christian orthodoxy through his non-traditional interpretation of the Bible. But that's just not the case. What Swedenborg was doing was simply codifying his observations, something that is within the reach of any ordinary person who is prepared to tolerate rational questions. And I'm going to demonstrate that today. The central idea of Correspondences is really very easy to understand. It is that everything in the natural world has its origin in the spiritual. So, for example, Swedenborg speaks of gestures.
All the feelings inside us have outward physical gestures that correspond to them. These gestures are the effects of those feelings. So a feeling of humility has as its gesture the act of bowing and even full prostration.
Can we find biblical support for this idea? Well, yes, we can. In the book of James, chapter 4, the author writes this: "Where do wars and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You lust and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war. Yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures." So, according to James, war originates in our desires for pleasure and lust. And so wars in the Bible can be said to correspond to those desires and lusts.
Wars symbolize nothing else on an inner level than spiritual battles or trials. Likewise, other battles mentioned in the Word, especially in the prophets. Human wars have no importance on the inner planes of the Word, since they are not spiritual or heavenly, and the Word contains only what is spiritual and heavenly.
In other words, while the natural content might be about wars and fights, the spiritual causes behind them are desires and lusts. And as James suggests, if you address the desires and lusts, the wars will cease. So how do we apply that to the individual? How does it equip us for every good work? The wars and fights we get involved in may not be of national significance, but the desires and lusts are every bit as real, and our world and relationships are better if they are confronted and addressed. And in reality, the war starts within our own hearts and minds long before it spills over into poisoning our relationships. And if it can be addressed at the stage of the internal struggle, the external world we inhabit is going to be all the better for it. So although the Old Testament talks of ancient wars far removed from our modern experience, they still address issues we have to face for ourselves and represent a universal human experience, desires and lusts, which are every bit as relevant to you and me now as they ever were. And the nations and armies that fought those battles represent warring factions within each one of us as we experience the struggle between things we know to be good and true and our own natural urges and instincts. I wonder whether this makes sense to you. Do you understand it? Could you perhaps apply it to other images and concepts within sacred scripture? And what questions arise for you as you process what I've just shown? As always, I'd welcome a conversation, so please do put something down in the comments. Keep it friendly, and I look forward to talking to you next time.